Okay, let's make a start. This lecture is entitled Charles Dickens, but it is really about Oliver Twist. 3 topics: genre, melodrama, workhouse. You may think that Oliver Twist looks like this. You may think of it as a novel or a book. But when Oliver Twist began publication in 1837, it was neither a novel nor a book. It was a story in a magazine. That magazine was called Bentley's Miscellany. How did we get here? A year before, in 1836, Charles Dickens was 24 years old. He was the author of one book, Sketches by Boz, which was a collection of short pieces. His next book, The Posthumous Papers of the Pickwick Club, was appearing serially as a monthly publication. Better known as the Pickwick Papers, this serial was a huge success, the bestseller of its day. A publisher named Richard Bentley invited the young Dickens to become editor of a new monthly magazine, Bentley's Miscellany. Under the pseudonym Boz, Dickens would be paid to edit, and he would contribute one article each month. It was such a generous offer that Dickens was finally able to quit his day job. He was a newspaper reporter for the Morning Chronicle. The first issue of Bentley's appeared in January 1837. Dickens contributed a short story, Public Life of Mr. Tulrumble, once mayor of Mudfog. For the next issue, in February, Dickens wrote another story, Oliver Twist, or The Parish Boy's Progress. Notice how this new story begins. Among other public buildings in the town of Mudfog, it boasts of one which is common to most towns, great or small, to wit, a workhouse. So the story begins in Mudfog, where the previous story was set. It seems like Oliver Twist is going to be a sequel, the continuing chronicles of a fictional town called Mudfog. This is how Oliver Twist first appeared in February 1837, one of many pieces in a monthly magazine, here placed just below a short poem. At this point, Oliver Twist does not call itself a novel or a tale, or even mention the intended length. The narrator refuses to divulge whether the life of Oliver Twist will be a long or short piece of biography. That is to say, a long or short contribution to Bentley's Miscellany. It could have gone on for just 1 or 2 more issues. Dickens was not contracted to write a novel for the pages of Bentley's Miscellany. It just sort of happened. Oliver Twist continued in the magazine for over 2 years, from 1837 until 1839. Eventually, it was published as a book. So what is the genre of Oliver Twist? It is a serial narrative, written from month to month, with cliffhanger endings. But you could argue that there is a generic play at mix. At times, it seems that we are reading journalism, satire, a social or political tract. Some readers think of it as a parable. Dickens himself referred to, quote, the principle of good surviving through every adverse circumstance, end quote. Another genre worth considering is melodrama. It is a term we still use today, usually in a negative sense. Stop being so melodramatic. But melodrama is an actual thing with a history, and it plays a role in how we read Oliver Twist. Melodrama, as the name suggests, is a drama accompanied by music, a melody drama. This form became popular in the 18th century, and it continued into the 20th century. Actors on stage would emote, and musicians in the orchestra pit would reinforce those emotions with melody. The melodrama offers a Manichaean view of life. This word comes from the ancient religion of Persia before the rise of Islam. This older religion spread across the Roman Empire and rivaled Christianity for a while. The basic idea is that there is a perpetual battle between the light and the dark, good and evil, the father of greatness versus the king of darkness. We find this Manichaean view at work in the melodrama. Characters are really, really good, or they are really, really bad. There is no in between. The virtue of this form is that it's really, really clear. We know who is who. The form is not, in a word, realistic. Most people in everyday existence partake of good and bad qualities. Characters in the melodrama lack what we would call psychology. There is no depth, no complexity. Characters are personifications of the good or the bad. In a melodrama, the good character may be named Dudley Do-Right, with shiny teeth and good manners. The bad character, with a name like Snidely Whiplash, will twirl his mustache, wear a dark cape, and say things like, "Drat! Curses! Foiled again!" Now think about Oliver Twist. At times it seems theatrical, or even melodramatic. Look at chapter 17, page 134. It is the custom on the stage in all good murderous melodramas to present the tragic and the comic scenes in as regular alternation as the layers of red and white in a side of streaky, well-cured bacon. Dickens here explains how melodrama works, and he explains how Oliver Twist works. The term good murderous melodramas is appropriate because of the Manichaean structure. Melodramas partake of the good as well as bad things, like murder. Then we have the image of streaky, well-cured bacon. In England, what is called streaky bacon in America is just called bacon. You can find it in any supermarket. The idea is that the layers of meat and fat are like the alternations between the comic and the tragic. Since the novel places so much emphasis on food and eating, it is a perfect image. So how does the book resemble a melodrama? The characters in Oliver Twist are good or bad. Mr. Brownlow is very, very good. Fagin and Bill Sikes are very, very bad. All of the characters want to help Oliver Twist or they want to harm him. There are very few who are neutral. The geography of this novel is also Manichaean. The locations are either good or evil. Oliver, like an object, bounces back and forth between these realms. You will notice that many characters are binaries. Mr. Brownlow is like the good father. Fagin is the bad father. Another binary is the two young women, Rose Maylie and Miss Nancy. Melodrama creates these binaries, good versus evil, and places them in alternation, in conflict, in confrontation. Now let's talk about the main character. Oliver Twist is an orphan. When we first meet him, he does not live in an orphanage. He lives in the workhouse. The workhouse was England's answer to the problem of poverty. English society was divided into bureaucratic regions, each called a parish. Each parish had a workhouse. In effect, this was the poorhouse. Anyone who could not sustain existence on his own could go upon the parish. That was the phrase, for public charity. But in 1834, just 3 years before Oliver Twist began publication, there was a new poor law. The argument was that the paupers had it too good. They were lying about, smoking pipes, having a jolly time. So the new poor law was designed to make conditions worse. There would be no more handouts. Anyone who needed public charity had to move into the workhouse, in essence, become a prisoner. Men and women lived in separate dormitories, so a husband and wife would be divided. Children also lived in a separate dorm. The early chapters are focused on this section of the workhouse. Oliver Twist is a parish boy, according to the subtitle, The Parish Boy's Progress, because he belongs to the parish workhouse. The most famous line in the book, Perhaps the most famous line in any British novel appeared in the very first month. "Please, sir, I want some more." Here's an orphan with no education to speak of, and he talks in perfect dictionary English. In contrast, think about the boys that Oliver encounters in the streets. They all talk in slang. "Hello, my covey, what's the row?" In case you did not notice, there's a glossary for all these terms at the end of your paperback. But why does Oliver speak in this grammatically correct way? It is worth thinking about. What happens next? Total chaos. The workhouse decides to get rid of Oliver Twist. We have to ask why. I think it is because Oliver, in this moment, is a revolutionary, in a polite British way. "Please, sir, if orphans want more, what next?" The French Revolution took place just a few decades earlier, and the English were afraid that the same thing would happen to them. So the workhouse authorities are quick to end this insurrection. We should also observe that Oliver shares the first name of England's own revolutionary hero, Oliver Cromwell. In the 17th century, Cromwell's forces terminated, at least for the moment, the monarchy in England when they decapitated the king, Charles I, a name that Charles Dickens would likely remember. Our Oliver is not a Cromwell, he's a Twist. That last name was given to him by the Beatle, Mr. Bumble. It is an arbitrary name based on the Beatles' alphabetical system, Twist, Unwin, Wilkins. You might expect that a novel called Oliver Twist will have some surprises, some plot twists along the way. But the word twist also indicates death by hanging. A criminal hanging from a noose would twist in the wind. So perhaps the early prediction is right, and Oliver is destined to hang from the gallows. As you proceed with Oliver Twist, think about genre, notice the influence of the melodrama, and consider the book's attack on the workhouse system. The end.